Denver thinks protesters are going to create one of those autonomous zones downtown like Seattle. Protesters insist they're not. They're fighting in the streets about it. An Aurora police officer escapes punishment for photos mocking Elijah McClain's death. What his resignation means for the chances he'll end up in a PD near you. The guy accused of holding roofers hostage thinking they were Antifa, he was a walking, talking red flag that something bad was going to happen. Denver blew up our phones to say wear a mask and keep calm in Denver on. Cool text, bro. And the small Colorado town that loves to America on the 4th and isn't taking kindly to being told to keep it down this year. That's next. An Aurora police officer is heading for the exits before he can be punished for photos mocking the death of Elijah McClain. Hard to blame him, though. I mean, Aurora's last interim police chief resigned rather than face possible punishment for his handling of a drunk cop on duty. So Officer Jaron Jones walks that well-worn path out the door of Aurora PD just ahead of the short T-Rex-like arms of internal affairs. Jones is one of 3 officers believed to be involved in a photo mimicking the neck hold that Aurora officers put on Elijah McClain before he died. Jones has been with that agency since 2016. McClain died in August of last year. We know that photo was taken several months after that. Jones resigned on Tuesday before his official discipline was handed down. Aurora police still won't say what discipline has been recommended for the officers involved. And citizens can't ask that question to Aurora police, where they tweeted about Jones's resignation today, because what Aurora police are doing these days is turning off the feature where people can comment on their tweets. More of that trademark transparency that you were promised. On Monday, we asked Interim Police Chief Vanessa Williams why they're shutting off citizen comments on information about the protest last weekend.
The decision to do that was actually made not due to the protests, but we had a missing endangered child last week, and people were filling up that tweet feed with, other things that were not helpful in allowing us to find this child. And so there's other ways for people to make complaints through our internal affairs. They can comment, they can tag us in a tweet. So it wasn't taking away their ability to say they were upset about something, but that's just not the forum. The Twitter is not the forum.
Interim Chief Vanessa Wilson. Here's the kicker. Because Officer Jones resigned rather than risk possible firing, he can keep his official state certification as a police officer, meaning legally, another police department in Colorado can just go and hire him. So Aurora police promised to promptly release the photos of officers mocking the death of McClain when that investigation was over. The investigation ended Monday, and what we're hearing is that they are going to release them tomorrow. For those who are not in the news world, that is what you call a Friday news dump, okay? Powerful institutions will drop news on a Friday afternoon or evening when they think that people are not paying attention. And Friday night going into a holiday weekend, that's like the double bonus for burying bad news. It was Westward's Michael Roberts who pointed out quite correctly that this is the 3rd time that this has been used in the Elijah McClain case, a Friday night news dump. Perhaps what Aurora police meant by transparency is that anybody can see through it. The guy accused of holding door-to-door salesmen at gunpoint because he thought they were Antifa was putting up red flags right and left before that incident. Threats, weapons, mental health concerns. Here's 9 Wants to Know's Kevin Vaughn.
It was late afternoon in this quiet cul-de-sac that a heavily armed Scott Goodmanson ordered 2 roofing salesmen to the ground, accusing them of being Antifa terrorists. It was the culmination of trouble that had started the day before after they knocked on his door. One of the men is a Colorado State football player who is black, and he and his colleague thought they'd defuse the conflict after talking with Goodmanson. But 42 pages of police reports, obtained by 9 Wants to Know, show that at least to Goodmanson, the dispute simmered all the next day, 11:13 a.m. Goodmanson called Loveland police, suggesting the roofing salesmen were Antifa, that they'd created a fake ad for their company, and that if the men came back in his network, they would not survive. Between 2 and 3 p.m., Goodmanson told a receptionist at a veterinary clinic that he was going to confront them with weapons. Then, around 6 p.m., A heavily armed Goodmanson is accused of doing just that, ordering them to the ground at gunpoint. He had 2 pistols, one with an extension that made it look like a rifle, and more than 150 rounds of ammunition, 2 knives, and a ballistic vest. The reports are sprinkled with clues about Goodmanson's mental state. His wife told officers that he seems to be having a mental break over the past 2 weeks. He thought the salesmen were only going to houses with American flags because they usually had guns and they were casing them. And he did not really seem to understand what was happening after he was arrested. Goodmanson twice needed medical attention in the hours after he was jailed, and now he's undergoing mental health treatment and facing charges of felony menacing and false imprisonment. For Next, I'm Kevin Vaughn.
Not continually repeating the names of the salesmen involved in this because investigators think that they were the victims of a crime. Goodmanson will be arrested at the time that he gets out of a mental health treatment facility in Fort Collins. So both the city of Denver and some conservative talk radio folks are convinced that protesters want to create an autonomous zone in downtown Denver, like they did in Seattle. The protest leaders themselves insist they're not interested in making a no-go zone for police in Denver. City doesn't believe them so much that they battled the protesters in the streets over that this morning. Our Ryan Hare has the video.
This is a non-violent protest.
This is video taken after midnight by someone who spent the night with protesters. The group had already been moved out of Civic Center Park without force by police hours earlier. But when police returned, they say more tents had popped up. Tents aren't allowed, and at this point, the protesters are violating park curfew.
One tent that was filled to the brim with waters and another tent that was filled with medical supplies. But we understood that to be constitutionally protected.
That's Gabriel Levine, founder of one of the protesting groups, the Afro Liberation Front. He insists police used force first. Denver Police Division Chief Ron Thomas told reporters it was the other way around.
The group threw things at officers, sprayed officers with some unknown type of irritant, as well as using fire extinguishers to spray at the officers.
Police say they used mace and batons on some protesters and eventually arrested 6 people, all in part to prevent the park from being taken over.
Certainly we're familiar with what that is, given what occurred in Seattle, and that was not something that we wanted to occur here in Denver.
Police had seen social media posts like this one on the Afro Liberation's Instagram story, calling the site a Denver autonomous zone.
It's starting to feel like a debate of semantics rather than what we were actually talking about.
Levine says he repeatedly told police Wednesday his group wasn't trying to establish an autonomous zone, that they were there to feed people experiencing homelessness and to occupy the park for as long as possible to spread the word about their demands for change.
And what was the end game? We're not in your park? Okay, that didn't really solve much.
For Next, I'm Ryan Hare.
Police insist that all of their actions last night were in line with their use of force policy, and DPD did also say that several officers came out of that with minor injuries. The city of Denver used its all-powerful emergency alert system this afternoon. The one that blows up every phone, buzzing and blaring, to tell people to wear a mask and to keep calm and Denver on. So everybody looking down at their phones thinking that this was an Amber Alert or maybe some kind of weather emergency or something like that, instead was wished a happy 4th of July and reminded to wear a mask. That is both a nice and a smart message, but a citywide emergency alert to every cell phone. City says that it was just taking seriously the idea of giving people a warning about masks before they gather for the 4th of July. These are those emergency alerts that we've told you can go in and disable on your phone. I hope that you don't do that because someday the message may be important. Something more than mask up and keep calm and Denver on. Speaking of masks, Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman is back after it, talking about the potential for a mask mandate in the city of Aurora. He wants Tri-County Health to make the decision on this. We've been down this road before. Kaufman's tweets today trod well-worn ground. Kaufman singled support for the mask ban, but we know Tri-County Health might hesitate because, Douglas County's Republican leaders would go ballistic if they do a mask order. Kaufman says Tri-County is having an emergency meeting Monday to discuss this mask order. Tri-County says that the meeting is actually Wednesday and said that it will be open to the public so people can show up spitting particles if they're mad about a mask order. Want to give you the daily look at hospitalization numbers in our state. They've been ticking up ever so slightly this week. Public health leaders say it would take a long period at this rate in order to really get worrisome. 147 people currently treated for coronavirus in our hospitals. 24 left in the last day, so if it's holding steady, you know about the new incoming hospitalization number. And man, we did some work on testing yesterday, more than 8,700 COVID-19 tests. That is Colorado's largest single-day total ever, and it's the first time we've been over 8,000 a day since last week, so go us. There is a list no one in rural Colorado wants to be on. It comes out once a decade, like now. And there are limits to the 4th this year.
If we had 251 people, they'd pull the plug. And I thought, that's really unreasonable.
A town fights for their God-given right to watch people stay on animals that don't want to be stayed on and to watch things go boom, boom, boom in the sky. Because this is still America. Next. Selling a gun magazine that holds more than 15 rounds of ammo, still illegal in this state based on this week's Colorado Supreme Court ruling. Yet gun stores will easily sell a do-it-yourself, easy-to-assemble kit as long as local law enforcement looks the other way.
Based on what I know of the law and interpretations from prosecutors, from district attorneys, that doesn't constitute a violation of state law. It talks about a finished, put together magazine. So, based on what I know, there's no reason to investigate that because it's not covered by the statute.
Republican sheriffs like Justin Smith, Larimer County, Steve Reams of Weld County, they've been opposed to a ban on high-capacity magazines. Last fall, our investigation found that they were still openly being sold in our state. So if a law falls in a forest and sheriffs won't enforce it,
the law didn't eliminate the ability for people to sell parts kits, and that's what some gun stores are still doing. And this ruling from the Supreme Court today doesn't change that. That particular portion of the law was not up for debate. It was whether or not the law itself was constitutional, not the specific provisions of it.
Yeah, that Supreme Court ruling just looked at the mags, did not look at those part kits. Can I make a recommendation? Colorado has a ton of great journalists exploring things that you know little about. And by you, I mean me. Okay, Luke Runyon, KUNC Radio. He covers water. I know that water is vital to Colorado, but frankly speaking, I'm out of my depth. Luke has this great new piece up on how water rights get lost in our state. It only happens once a decade. This is called the Decennial Abandonment List, and it's out right now. Water, is on a use it or lose it system, first in time. And this story by Luke explains how it's really tough to lose those rights once a decade. We have a link to that KUNC article on the next Facebook page.
Hot and dry in Denver today, and with the sunshine, temperatures near 100 degrees, about 10 degrees above the average of 87, and that's not all. Land spouts and baseball-sized hail on the far eastern plains. Strong storms still going this hour. They're moving into Nebraska and Kansas. Things will start to settle down a little bit, but Denver will get in on some of that action tomorrow. Skies will clear this evening. Temperatures will be very mild with sunshine and heating of the day. Foothill storms by lunchtime. Storms roll over the urban corridor between 3 and 5, and storms could bring heavy rain. Not tonight, dry and 61. Tomorrow, high of 92 with late day storms both Friday and Saturday that could bring heavy rain. 90s for the weekend and into the extended period. Hello, July.
Quintessential Americana. Rodeo and fireworks all in one place.
I mean, not like at the same time. I mean, that would scare the out of the horses. But a small town in Colorado is fighting to throw its usual big 4th of July bash despite the pandemic. That's next. Granby, Colorado loves itself some America on the 4th of July. They've got this great rodeo up there. They cap it off with a fireworks show. This year, though, the county health department is telling them that they can only have 250 people in attendance due to the pandemic. That is not going over well in Granby, Colorado. The rodeo is urging patriots and rodeo fans to tell county leaders to, quote, open the gates to more freedom-loving Americans to rodeo and salute our freedom.
Well, in Granby, we've had rodeo since 1943. This is called Flying Heels Arena. This particular place where the arena is now, my parents actually got this land granted from the BLM about a little over 50 years ago, and they built this arena. So my parents did it even before I was born, started doing rodeos, and then we just grew up through the ranks. So kind of by default, I just keep going, and my kids help too. Cowboys by nature are very patriotic and quintessential Americana. Rodeo and fireworks all in one place.
And so I've been serving as the incident commander with the Grand County COVID-19 response team. So we worked with them. Public health director felt like, we ought to start small. And so they did a rodeo last Saturday, and public health director granted the 250 based on some protective measures.
Last weekend we had 250 people, and our stands were really quite bare. There could have been more people, even with social distancing. That's 10%, and our capacity is 2,500 of spectators. There's some more outdoor stands that aren't covered. So that one over there is our brand new one. And so I know exactly the capacity. That was 406. So we have a lot of seating.
We're fortunate in Grand County right now. Our case rates are relatively low. Our case counts are still relatively low compared to some of the other resort communities. It's just trying to keep our community safe and keep our businesses open. And we don't want to backtrack and force restaurants to close or force short-term lodging to close. So we just got to be smart about things.
And we get that. And again, I'll just reiterate, it's only 10%, which nothing in the state guidelines is as low as 10%. It is an issue of a health issue, but our final thought would be, it's outdoors. It's an American tradition. It's safe out here. We're distanced. It's personal responsibility.
The view from Granby, Colorado, through the lens of our photojournalist, Foster Gaines. Tell you what, your generosity abounds. We are 5 weeks into our Word of Thanks campaign, and we have passed the $200,000 mark. Still time for you to get in on helping this week's hand-picked cause. That's your feedback next. Reminder about our Word of Thanks project this week. You guys have donated almost $18,000 to the Family Support Fund of the Nurse Family Partnership. This is a great organization. They provide first-time mothers without a lot of resources a nurse on call 24/7 that they can call. But when the call comes in and it's, I need help buying gas this week, or my groceries, or I'm not sure if I can afford diapers, or I need help with rent, that's where the Family Support Fund comes in. If you text the word thanks to 303-871-1491, we will send you the link to donate. Already about $18,000 raised, which puts our 5-week fundraising total for Word of Thanks over $200,000 for 5 organizations. Thank you for that. Fabian writes in on Facebook, I just gave, and going forward, I will give $5 for every day you are furloughed to whichever Word of Thanks charity is being promoted. Fabian, that's very generous. Don't tempt the management. Jay wrote in about the Denver text alert, the one that told people to wear a mask and keep calm in Denver on. He goes, why are people mad about this? I appreciate the Churchill reference. Keep calm and carry on. He says, seemed appropriate to me. Christine thought it was really peak Denver. And Michael writes in to say, beard, it's a good look. I hope your wife likes it. It's a great reminder. I should ask her. See you next time.